Cool. All right, great. Thanks, everyone. So finally, we're getting to kick off this presentation. I'm going to go through some new media business models and some strategies and approaches to diversifying revenue streams. We know that this topic of choosing which revenue mixes, which revenue activities and strategies is one of the most pressing and difficult challenges that media publishers are facing across the world. We've seen some big examples of success at the global level, the likes of the New York Times, Financial Times, Washington Post of the world, and the rest of us have struggled through this massive challenge of how do we make a sustainable media organization in this current disrupted way of being and existing and publishing. If we could just go to the next screen, Lisa, we'll just cover some of the topics that we're covering today, and just to give you an overview of what you can expect. It's quite a long presentation. If we just get the next slide, please. Okay, we're going to cover quite a lot today. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Daily Maverick, I'm going to share very little bit about who we are and our history and how we've grown over the last 13 years. We're going to talk a little bit about the specifics of the revenue problem and trying to sort of break that down into, what is the problem statement? What are the areas of this revenue problem beyond just trying to keep our heads above water? How does all this tie into our vision and mission, and how does that guide us in our choices of revenue mixes and specific revenue activities? Moving from a B2B to a B2C environment, we'll dive into some of that detail as well. And what are the various different things that influence our choices and our decisions when choosing different kinds of revenue to pursue? I'll share with you some examples of revenue types. There are so many different individual types of revenue efforts that we might pursue, categorizing them, and just to give some examples of what's available, what other publishers are doing. And then we'll look at membership in news. It's a fairly new phenomenon and something that we have firsthand experience that we can share with you, and we'll dive into a bit of a case study looking at the Daily Maverick's efforts in launching a membership program in South Africa and some of the acquisition tactics that we've used along the way to grow our membership base. And then we'll end off with some key takeaways and some ideas to help you take this information and put it into action. So a little bit about the Daily Maverick for those who aren't familiar with us. We started in 2009 with 5 people in a small boardroom with an incredibly noisy air conditioning unit. We're now over 100 people and growing. We have huge growth ambitions. We were digital only until September of 2020, when we launched a weekly print publication. We were one of the only people sort of crazy enough / brave enough to launch a print publication in the middle of COVID, in an era when the death of print is pretty much the assessment that most people have of that as a product offering. And in 2019, we were the recipients of the Global Shining Light Award for Investigative Journalism for our work in a huge investigative series called the Gupta Leaks, which had massive impact on South Africa and the political landscape. A little bit more about the size of the organization. We have about 6 million website visitors per month. That's monthly unique visitors per month. We send out about 15 million newsletters to 250,000 subscribers through, it's about 14 or 15 different newsletters that we have. And we have 17,000 active members who support us monthly or annually on a recurring basis. So that's just a little bit about the organization and the kind of audience size. If you have a look at our website, you'll see there's quite a lot of accountability journalism. So a lot of focus on investigations, accountability, social justice, and continuously trying to keep our journalism in line with the needs of the country and the most pressing needs of the country, and where we can add value to them. So that's just a quick look at what our homepage looks like. If we could just go to the next slide, Melissa, thank you. So a little bit about me. I'm a reformed accountant in recovery. I helped co-found Daily Maverick in 2009 when I joined a month before we launched the organization. As I mentioned, we were only 5 people, so my job was covering pretty much everything non-editorial. So I have the experience and the wounds and the scars of having to sell advertising, having to do the finances of the organization, help with fundraising. I've also written articles, launched newsletters, new products, and managed technology rollouts, and helped design and launch our membership program, as well as our newspaper. So pretty much the entire gambit and suite of challenges that come with being in this business. I have experience, and as I said, a lot of scars from some of these as you go along, and figure out, just what it takes to keep an organization like this going and growing through a period of great disruption. Next slide, please. So if I had to summarize the revenue problem, I would agree that sustainability is the biggest issue facing media today. So following a period of huge disruption, where the industry managed to kick the disruption can down the road so far and for so long that when it did eventually come for us, it came for the entire industry around the world in a short space of time, and from some areas that from competitors who weren't even part of the media industry to start with. Every industry, every business faces disruption. On average, the S&P 500 companies have a lifespan of about 14 years from any date of measurement. So we know that disruption comes for everyone, but the media industry, the way that it was set up, the way that the huge barriers to entry in terms of licenses that were awarded, or the cost of printing to enter the industry, these things kept disruption at bay for a long period of time. But all it did was, instead of having individual countries or organizations being disrupted, the entire industry felt that the impact of that pent-up disruption that came when the tech companies entered the media sector. The second characteristic of the revenue problem that I like to think of is that the cookie cutter revenue model is dead. And what I mean by that is, if you go back 20 years or so, you would see that almost every media organization had the same way of generating revenue and profit. So subscriptions and advertising. And that was, whether you went to an organization in the United States or in Scandinavia or in Africa, you would generally find that the same cookie cutter model was being used. And that is no longer the case. What the disruption now demands of us is that we are having to be entrepreneurs. We're having to figure out which model works best for us. You'll see the very many types of revenue that exist out there, revenue opportunities that exist out there. And so we have to create custom and bespoke revenue mixes and strategies for each organization. And I think that adds to the challenge, which is where before we didn't really have to think about it. Now we have to look at our situation, we have to look at our environment, and we need to figure out what strategy works best for us given our scenarios and our own challenges. So it requires a bespoke solution and an entrepreneurial mindset. If an industry has been going well for 50, 60 years, one can rest and get a little bit complacent with regards to the skills and the demands of having to keep innovating and keep growing and challenging and developing new products and launching new products. And so that has all changed. And within this, a whole new set of skills and knowledge and people and resources and technology is required in order to solve this very complex problem of revenue and sustainability. Next slide, please. So how do we go about the solution? So there's a bit of a framework that we can look at. And I think the first one is that we have to have a very clear business vision, right? The one that aligns with the editorial vision of the organization and also is aligned with the needs of the audience that we're serving. So all these three things need to work together. I'm a big fan of congruency, and when things are complementary and aligned in both principle and practice, that's when things can start really clicking together, and we can start making inroads towards solving the problem. It's important that we have a strategy and a framework to execute the vision that we have. And so we'll dive in a little bit into each of these topics around, how do you go about thinking about what is a strategy? There's a lot of misconception about what is a strategy out there. The word is thrown about quite a bit without having the sort of good grasp of the concept. And then in all of these things, we can't sit and tell you what you need to do, but what we can do is maybe share some of the frameworks where we've approached problems like this, that you might be able to take that framework and then apply it to your own situation, and then figure out a way forward to then go ahead and make some progress towards this. And in all of this, you come across in maybe this in this course or something similar, you'll find that product thinking is key to all of this, which is designing products, designing opportunities, starting with the needs of the audience in mind, and then working backwards from that, testing a hypothesis that's based on data or a case study or some kind of experience, and then launching minimum viable products that we can then test and iterate. And then as we gain successful data that gives us the confidence to put more energy behind things, we can then do that with a lot more confidence and certainty of success. So that's a way of looking at the solution. So when I say vision, what do I mean by vision? So think of the vision as the answer to the question, where are we going, right? It's often a clear, short, realistic. It doesn't talk about measurements. Another way of thinking about this is to ask yourself, if we are successful in what we're doing, what does that look like? And defining that, spending time to think about what that future state looks like, will paint this picture of what success looks like in our mind, and that helps us put together a vision that we can then define and then circulate within our teams, get everyone to understand that we're all working towards a common goal. This is the vision of the organization. This is where we're going. This is what we want to achieve. And then having things like a business plan is how we're going to get there, right? This is where we go into the detail. We work backwards and say, well, if this is the future state that we want, if this is the success we want to achieve, is this the change that we want to see? If this is the health of the organization, this is how we're going to do that, and then putting together that detailed, lengthy, and practical business plan. I can tell you that in my career, I've done many business plans, and none of them have worked out in the way that I'd hoped, except the only one that did work out in the way that I hoped, in fact, better than I hoped, was the business plan that we put together for the launch of our membership program. But I will say that it's not really about whether the plan is successful or not, but the process of planning that is really important, going through that effort of figuring out what it's going to take to achieve a goal, and working backwards from there, going through the step, identifying the key milestones, the tasks, and the different efforts and resources that are required to fulfill that vision. Next slide, please. So what are some example vision statements at the organizational level, just to give you an idea of what that looks like? So if we go back to Microsoft's original vision statement, so the one that Bill Gates and co put together, is there will be a personal computer on every desk running Microsoft software. So you can see it doesn't talk about numbers, it doesn't talk about metrics, but it's just something that everyone in the organization could get behind. Everyone knew that each decision that they made was in pursuit of achieving this vision. And if it wasn't, then it helped them prioritize. It helped them get rid of things or stop doing things that weren't going to help them put or weren't going to help them get a personal computer on every desk running Microsoft software. And so this is how vision can be quite powerful and can be and can help align the organization and the multitude of efforts that are required in order to get something as big and as grand as this going. Another big one is Amazon's, which is our vision is to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, to build a place where people can come to and find and discover anything that they might want to buy online. You can see that the part that I've highlighted here is customer centricity. And if you dive into a lot of the work that Amazon does, how they develop new businesses, how they develop new products, you can see it's all about being customer centric. I won't speak too much about their labor practices, but certainly when it comes to being a customer centric organization, very few people, and an innovative organization, very few people can criticize them on not having achieved that vision. And then just to bring it down to a very practical level, I mean, if you do visit a hair salon, here's one that I found. Our salon will change the way you think about a haircut and leave you glowing both inside and out. And again, it's really just to be able to get everyone who works in the organization to know this is the future state. This is what success looks like for us. And everything we do is going to help us achieve that. And that's why vision statements are so important. You can have them at the organizational level, you can have them at a business unit or at a team level, but it's just an important part of starting with the end in mind and then working backwards from there. Next slide. So we talked a little bit about strategy. Here's Jeff Bezos talking about what is strategy, and with all the mumbo jumbo out there, this is how he approaches it. Strategy is the answer to the question, what can we do that's really hard? And by implication, what that means is what can we do that's really hard that our competitors don't want to do? And if we do it and we're successful, we'll be able to dominate the market. An important thing to note there is that goals are not a strategy. They are the outcome of the strategy, right? So goals are what we strive to achieve. They're how we measure our success of whether a strategy is working or not. The next slide, please. One of the best books on strategy that helped me really sort of crystallize my thinking about this is by Professor Richard Rummelt. It's called Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, and he has a 3-stage approach to putting to or defining a strategy, and it's broken down into 3 parts. The first one is a diagnosis, so trying to define what is the problem that we're trying to solve, right, and to put that down. Then coming up with a guiding policy, and 3, a set of concrete actions. So if you think about this in, let's say, the terms of a patient who has been diagnosed with cancer. So the diagnosis is cancer. We're trying to prevent this patient from passing away. We're trying to get them back to good health, right? And so and we're trying to manage or deal with this cancer and get them into a state of remission. The guiding policy could be, for example, a treatment of chemotherapy and a change in diet. I'm just putting stuff out there. I'm no medical practitioner here. And then the set of actions would then be, right, it's a chemotherapy treatment for X number of times in the first 6 months, and it's going to be a change in diet that is plant-based and X amount of liters of water a day. And so you can see how this strategy to help this patient recover from the cancer diagnosis has a guiding policy of chemotherapy as a treatment and a diet and a change in diet and the actions. And so that sort of approach helps us frame exactly how we're going to address this problem and how we're going to define our strategy. And we can then, off the back of that, go and set ourselves goals and a measure of success to help us gauge how we are progressing against our defined strategy, and whether indeed the strategy is appropriate and working for us, right? So we'd have key markers. We'd be looking at, let's say, healthy blood cell count, for example, or BMI index, or all of those things would be indicators of whether our strategy and the change that we're looking to get out of employing the strategy. Next slide, please. Right, so we mentioned earlier that this change, B2B being business to business versus B2C, which is business to consumer. This change is one of the biggest challenges that news organizations are still grappling with, right? So B2B, for example, is where, and if you're in the business of selling advertising, you'll be selling advertising to other businesses, for example, rather than individuals and to the public, right? And so that process of selling, that approach of business development is very different to how you would approach reader revenue, for example. So we're talking about low volume, high value invoices. So you might send out 5, 10, 20, or maybe even, if you're lucky, 100 invoices to different advertisers in a month. And those would be larger in value than, let's say, if you were working in a B2C environment on reader revenue, for example, where you would have thousands or hundreds of thousands of smaller charges and invoices if you were rolling out a membership program or paywall, for example. And so that change, moving from B2B to B2C, comes with a whole host of new skills that are required in entrepreneurship, marketing, innovation, product and technology. Effectively, we become e-commerce businesses. And so we need to be e-commerce enabled with the people and the technology that we have. And key to all of this is understanding our audiences so that the journalism and the products that we deliver are creating value for them. And we're deepening that loyalty and that engagement that's going to aid our pursuit of driving reader revenue. And so that's why change is so difficult, and we're having to upskill all the time. Next slide, please. So, and then also I've mentioned that we need skills in marketing. So this is just a gif of from a movie where it says, if we want our B2C to be greater than our B2B, then you have to be ABC, which is always be closing. And I can tell you from experience that the amount of copy, the amount of marketing that needs to be continuously refreshed, that needs to be rewritten, that has to be creative, that has to be linked to the news cycle, all of that requires a huge effort to be continuously driving. You know, every day is a selling day, right? Every opportunity to get new people into the funnel, to move them to the next stage of the funnel, requires an always on effort that just never ends. And those demands are again one of the challenges that media organizations have to approach and figure out how they're going to staff that effort appropriately so that they can make headway into the reader revenue problem and into the state of sustainability. Next slide, please. So this is a quote or something similar that you might see out there, and people will go, the original sin of digital publishing was giving away content for free. I don't believe that to be true. That is, if you look at the New York Times, a big part of their funnel is the free articles that they give to readers, and then they employ a metered paywall. I would rather say that, or rather put forward that not having a plan to convert readers into more engaged and loyal audiences, getting people to subscribe for newsletters, getting people to attend events, getting people to deepen their relationship that we can then possibly convert into paying and supporting audiences. That was the original sin. So don't let people say that giving content away for free was the original mistake that we made when we went into digital publishing. It was not. It was that we weren't thinking about how we could deepen our relationships with those audiences and get them to a more engaged and loyal relationship, where financial support might be one of the outcomes of that relationship. Next slide, please. So I like to think about this on a curve, and so I'm going to give you some examples of how we look at our revenue curve and the different audiences. So if we map this on a graph, we've got revenue per user on the one side, and we've got the size of our different audiences. So if we segment our different audiences, we have different types of revenue that we could map against different audience segments. So the majority of our 6 million monthly uniques, let's say it's 4 million or so, are people who just visit once per month, for example. If you just click the next button, it'll pop up and show that the kind of revenue that we can generate from those, what we call flybys, is really, we can't hope to do anything more other than to serve them programmatic ads in that visit. There's about 1 million or so audience members, unique visitors, who are a little bit more engaged. Those people might visit our homepage or might subscribe to one of our newsletters. And so the ads that we sell directly to advertisers, where our sales team have been involved in that process and are of a higher value, we can sell those ads and place those ads and run that inventory on our premium, what we call our premium slots on our homepage, on our newsletters, and in slots that are generally better performing and what we consider to be more premium. And you can see that 200,000 and 250,000 audience members are where we get a higher revenue per user than programmatic ads. So it's a much bigger multiple than the ads that we can get on the open exchange. And then as we move into a more loyal and engaged segment, so the 60,000 is where we feel our membership levels could get to. And so we're thinking, okay, we can get a much higher revenue per user on that basis. And so as we move along this curve and as we get to smaller and smaller, and essentially what we're getting to is our super fans, right? We're trying to find who are those super fans, those people who just completely align with our vision and our mission, people who are willing to do so much, who are willing to volunteer, who are willing to buy new products and new revenue efforts that we're involved in. And so last year we launched a book 2 or 3 years ago, we launched a book publishing division where we're publishing our own books. We're also selling books through our e-commerce store as well. And so that's something that we could do, that we are doing. And once a year or twice a year, we host big events where we get 1,000 people into conference centers. And the cost of the ticket prices of those are much higher than, let's say, what we can get on selling a book or selling a membership on a monthly basis. And then as we get closer and closer to our super fans, what is that thing that we could offer that is really exclusive, really high value to those really small but valuable super fans that we know exist. And so it sometimes helps to put this on a revenue scale, revenue curve, where we can kind of segment our audiences. Yours might look very different to this, but it is kind of useful to figure out and to do this exercise to segment. Okay, what can I do to each of these for these audiences? How can I create value for them? How can I offer something that is aligned with our brand and our vision and our mission that can help us generate revenue? So this was an interesting exercise and way to approach that might be useful to you guys as well. Next slide, please. Another framework that I quite enjoy is the Ikigai. There's some debate whether this was actually an age-old or centuries-old Japanese custom, or something that was designed by someone more recently and try to give it street cred by giving it a Japanese name. I don't know, the jury's still out. But anyway, still a good framework, whether it's old or not. And so at the intersection of these four concepts, right? It's supposed to help people identify on an individual basis, help them figure out what they should be doing in life, right? And so the framework goes like this: what do you love doing? What does the world need? What are you good at? And what can you be paid for? And in the middle of that is your Ikigai. And so sometimes people need a bit of help to go through this on an individual basis. Others can do it by themselves, but it's quite useful to bring this into an organization and to kind of to do this, when choosing what revenue opportunities to follow or what products to build. And I like to say build Ikigai products or revenue streams. And so the first one is, what do you love doing and what do you want to do? And this can tie into, what is your vision? What kind of journalism do you want to do? Do you want to pursue? The other one is, what does the world need? And this part is sometimes overlooked and forgotten by media organizations as they choose what to innovate, what area to innovate to or expand into, is that there needs to be a need for this product or for this service, right? If there isn't a need for it, then we're just going to be creating stuff that we want, and without that alignment with audience needs, right? And so this is why I mentioned earlier that understanding the needs of our audiences is key to this whole process and where that overlaps, right? What are you good at is another way of saying, do we have the resources and skills in order to deliver this at a rate or at a standard or at a level that is better than our competitors, right? And if we don't have those resources, are we going to acquire them? Are we going to develop them? Are we going to grow them internally? But it's an important consideration, because if we don't have them, we have to figure out, are we still going to pursue this, or do we have to wait until we build the skills in-house? And then finally, what can you be paid? What can you be paid for? Is how are we going to generate the revenue to make this sustainable? Is it philanthropic funding? Is it B2B or B2C? Is it through a membership program? Is it through selling ads? Is it through consulting? So this framework is quite useful in that it takes us through that process of just checking that the alignment that we need, that congruency that we need is there, because often one or even two of these are missing from decisions and commercial revenue decisions when media organizations are jumping into new areas of products. Next slide, please. So if I look around, and I said earlier that one of the challenges of being in media today versus 20 or 30 years ago is that the cookie cutter model no longer works, and we have to come up with a custom and bespoke plan for how we're going to develop our revenue. And the reason being is that there are influences that have an impact on what you can or might or want to pursue. And so the first one is obviously, what kind of journalism, what kind of editorial do we want to put out into the world, right? And so if it's entertainment type journalism, if it's travel type journalism, if it's hard-hitting investigations, if it's local community journalism, that editorial vision and the attached business vision are going to influence what kind of revenue opportunities are available, right? How are you funded or structured? If you're a nonprofit, that might give you access to philanthropic funding. If you are are in a political or economic environment that is very difficult to operate under, if you are in a place that has very high censorship or very strict censorship laws, if you're in an unstable political environment where the kind of work that you do makes it hard for local businesses to support you, all of these things are going to influence which types of revenue and what types of products to put out into the world. Do we have the resources to be able to deliver on something? And what does the competitive environment look like? So all those things and a few others that I haven't listed here come into the mix in terms of, you know, what we can choose to follow and what we can deliver on as an organization. Next slide, please. So some examples here, and I'm just putting a few ideas here on paper, and you'll see that there's lots of individual types of revenue here, and I've broken them down into three buckets: commercial, philanthropic, and reader revenue. And you'll see there's just so many different types of revenue activities and opportunities here. But what I want you to get out of this is that without understanding the foundational principles and having those strategies defined, and to have those frameworks to help you choose which of these are applicable or that you are best suited to pursue, you can get lost in all of this, right? Because there are just so many. Just looking at this page, in the content space, or alongside content, print and digital advertising, and, you know, selling directly to advertisers, plugging into programmatic and network delivery mechanisms, selling sponsored content, offering classifieds, physical and digital events, syndicating the content that you produce, getting involved in producing documentaries. We've done that. We're working on our third documentary now, feature-length documentary. Custom publishing on behalf of others, getting into book publishing. So these are all examples in and around the content and editorial space that are commercial revenue opportunities. Some other ones are affiliates. So this is where you might see on a site a publisher promoting a type of product where an affiliate revenue or a commission is earned if someone completes a sale. E-commerce, which is selling directly from that publication site, and embedded e-commerce is a new area that's developing in Europe, especially. Getting into joint ventures with other organizations, property leasing. So I can think of an example in Johannesburg. One of the big media companies owned an events venue, and one of our commissions of inquiry sat for 2 years in that space, and they were able to lease out that space to the commission for quite a long time. Consulting services. So this is obviously for some of the big organizations. You'll see Financial Times Consulting is becoming a bigger and bigger operation for the Financial Times. Technology licensing. So the Washington Post licenses their CMS, and even some of the medium-sized organizations like Axios also license their technology out into the publishing world. Reader revenue. So some of the direct cover prices on print publications, donations, memberships, subscriptions, which sit on a scale, and I'll get into a little bit of the differences there between those three. Ad-free browsing, so offering that either as part of a subscription or paywall, or just simply as a standalone product. And then in COVID, a lot of newspaper publishers saw a spike in e-edition subscriptions as people turned to digital daily publications for their favorite newspapers. So next slide, please. So now I want to touch on something that's close to my heart and that of the Daily Mavericks, and that's membership in news, and how this differs from paywall subscriptions and donations. Next slide, please. So at the core of this, subscribers pay their money to get access to a product. Members join a cause and participate because they believe in it. And so that's the definition from the Membership Puzzle Project. Some of you are familiar with their work, a think tank that was launched to further the cause of membership in news. And what this boils down to is that often paywall subscribers are really transactional, right? They're paying a transaction to get access to something, and members are going, I believe in your cause, I'm committed to what you're trying to achieve, and I want to join you. And often there's a big community element behind that as well, developing a community, driving engagement, giving people opportunities to participate beyond just financial support. And so a very different offering when you think about the two in terms of what is available for people who want to join the respective programs. You'll see that there's often, excuse me, we use a lot of emotive, emotive messaging to help really identify and to clarify that this is a cause that people can get behind. And so the kind of language we use in our marketing, the kind of imagery that we use is all designed to, is aligned with the fact that this is a cause-driven, a mission-driven effort that people can be part of or could be part of. So there's an example, defend truth during the fight. So really something that stirs up a more emotive reaction than, you know, you've run out of free articles or you've used up all your free articles this month. So if I think of the reasons of why Daily Maverick turned to membership, I think the first one is because it was aligned with our vision. We have a vision, you know, the soundbite is know more, know better, and the highlight on more, right? So we want people who spend time with our journalism to know more and to know better. And so, you know, if we put our work behind a paywall, then that's going to be limiting what people will be able to access from our journalism. And so it's going to, you know, it's going to be the antithesis of our vision. So it was aligned. And so that was really a good sign when we were in the early stages of planning and deciding, you know, what kind of reader revenue effort were we going to pursue. It helped the way we designed it. It helped keep our work free for those who can't afford to pay. And in a country with 35% unemployment and 70% youth unemployment, it was very important for us that that our reader revenue effort didn't just make our journalism available to a few elite members of society. And we recognized that that we needed a reader revenue program that was going to help us achieve the impact at a societal level. And we understood that membership and the way that we did it, which was a voluntary membership program where people could choose to participate in, didn't limit anyone's content or the amount of content that they could access. And we realized if we had put up a paywall, that we would probably be financially better off, but the political landscape in the country would be very different, and the country would possibly be quite far worse off than if we hadn't adopted a voluntary membership program. And so all of that was kind of congruent for us and aligned with us in choosing a voluntary membership program. This is one of my favorite quotes when it comes to thinking about reader revenue, and it's from Jessica Lessin, the founder of The Information. It's a United States Silicon Valley-based media organization that focuses on technology, big tech, and it goes, you can't put a paywall on a pig, which is, if your journalism isn't good enough, if it isn't, and she likes to say 10 times better than your competitors, there's not enough reason for people to support you financially, right? You've got to be aiming for that 10 times better than your competitors, so that you can stand out and people who would be willing to pay for your journalism in a context, in a paywall context, or even in any reader revenue context. It's really about, is our journalism creating enough value for people that they might want to support us financially, right? And so creating value for audiences is at the heart of any reader revenue program, whether that's subscriptions, donations, or memberships. And in order to create value, we have to be servicing a need, right? And that's where the audience needs comes in again and again and again, is we can only create value if we understand which needs we're servicing, and we're doing a good job of servicing those needs. Next slide, please. So I want to share with you some of our experiences in launching a membership program. Before we did launch our membership program, we ran a minimum viable product, which was basically a WordPress plugin that allowed us to offer recurring donations as to our audiences, to our most engaged audiences. And following that successful recurring donations effort that we launched, we then surveyed those people who had contributed to us on a recurring basis, and used the results of those surveys to help inform and design the membership program that was going to be launched shortly thereafter. So these are just some of the answers to the survey questions that we ran at the end of that, and then some of the decisions we took after that. So the first thing was to try and figure out who we were dealing with, right? And this was one of the more sort of I guess easy things to affirm, that it was our most loyal and engaged visitors, people who came to us on a daily basis, that were the ones who were going to support us financially. So people come daily and weekly, and you can see that the majority of the people come on a daily basis. But don't forget the people, and especially when you're working in a donation or a cause-driven effort like the membership, that there are some people who would like to just help you for the sake of it, and aren't necessarily going to come, who come every day. And so don't forget about your marketing to those people too. Next slide, please. So how long did you read Daily Maverick before donating? So this was obviously tricky, because this was the first time that we had asked people to help us and support us directly. And so you can see that it's people who'd been around for a while, at least a few months, and mostly a few years. And so this highlighted to us that it's going to take time for people to build up habit, to build up trust, and to get sort of accustomed to the work that we're doing and the needs that we're servicing. And so it's about making sure that we're thinking about how we're moving people through the funnel, and the importance of knowing what are the key sort of aspects of our funnel, right? So for us, and you'll see that newsletters were a very big part of our funnel, and the fact that you have to be marketing to people a few times over a few months before they convert, right? And we're talking about a small percentage of your top line audience as well. So we also asked people to rate the benefits that they would like to see. We were toying around with some ideas of what kind of benefits people would have. And so just surveying these people who had donated really helped us prioritize which efforts or which benefits to launch with. So the opportunity to engage with Daily Maverick journalists and analysts, an ad-free website browsing experience, members-only newsletter, the ability to comment on articles, and access to members-only events. And so you can see that these top 5 benefits all related very closely to the Daily Maverick experience and what we could offer that no one else could. And so it really brought home to us the fact that, that even the benefits that we offer should be aligned to the cause of what we're delivering. And so the membership puzzle uses the example of the tote bag, and where people are saying, don't give me the tote bag, rather use the money for journalism and to further the cause that we're part of. Next slide, please. So influencing choices. So we went with a slider that gives people, you can choose the amount of your contribution. We use bold colors and default landing price to try and influence choice. And to remove friction, we allow people to cancel at any time. What we do try and do is we do offer incentives for higher tier contributions. And so, you can, start right down at the bottom of 75 Rand a month, or if you choose 200 Rand a month, we've done a deal with Uber where you get, Uber vouchers back at the value of 200 Rand a month as well. And so we try and influence higher tier options, right? So I'll share with you on the next slide what the current benefits look like, right? And so we've broken them down into 3 categories: the journalism experience, some commercial partnership arrangements, and engagement opportunities with either the website or the editorial team. So the journalism experience is people's user experience on the site, so allowing them to comment on articles, allowing them to turn off ads, a dedicated behind-the-scenes newsletter that we send to our members, which has a 50% open rate. So if you're familiar with some of the industry standards, that's more than double the industry standard for newsletters. And then offering attendance to exclusive webinars and screenings, or usually what happens is they are pre-launch screenings or webinars that go out later on, might get recorded. And so we still stay true to the fact that that journalism isn't restricted just to paying members. Engagement opportunities, we're constantly through the newsletter to members, engaging with our members in surveys, asking them to vote on projects. Maybe it's a book publishing project or a new product we're launching. We offer them the ability to participate in events, to either suggest topics that they might want to see us cover, or even in a couple of cases, we've actually had experts in our membership base who were invited to present a topic at one of our events. So everything from simple things like helping us choose book covers, some cases helping us crowdsource journalism. So where we need data about that we can only collect from the public, what was the experience like at the Department of Home Affairs, for example, or electricity price increases. So, we've gone to our members to help us crowdsource data for various investigations and pieces of journalism, and be sources in some of our stories. We talk about the IKEA effect, is that people want to be part of something that is doing good in the world, or building things. And so, people can, through non-financial ways, also participate, which is when people sign up, we ask them, what is your superpower in the world? And so we have a database that we then share with our editorial team and the rest of the organization, where we, are able to access people who are willing to help and share their superpowers. So that could be anything from environmental law protection agent, which we didn't even know. There were things like that, drone pilots, and there were all sorts of superpowers in that database, which is great. We ask people to fill that in when they sign up. People are happy to volunteer their time and their skills. And sometimes, as I said, we found people who are experts in their field who could be sources in our story. And we saw that come through quite heavily in COVID, where some of the most qualified scientists in the country were members, and we could reach out to them, and we're happy to help us with our coverage. And then the commercial side, which was Uber benefits and discounts on our books and e-commerce store. So just some stats from that. So how many people actually take the higher tier? So we're at 2/3 of people take the higher tier. 1/3 of people take the lowest option, and then a very small people take some other element. So pretty much 100% coverage between the two options in terms of on a monthly basis, and then on an annual basis, very similar numbers we're seeing in terms of the redemption rates or the sign-up rates of those two different tiers. The people who sign up, so we have 65% of people sign up for the higher tier, but interestingly enough, only 15% of people actually redeem those Uber vouchers that they sign up for. Less than 10% of people choose to turn off ads, and less than 10% of people actually comment on our articles. And so you can see what incentivizes people to sign up for something might not necessarily be the thing that they actually use that often as they go on. And so this comes into play when we go back and we do our renegotiations with Uber, for example, and how we look at people go, yeah, I'm happy to have that, but I don't. We surveyed some people and said, hey, you have the ability to turn off ads. Why don't you do it? And they said, well, we want you to get the extra income, or you guys don't actually have 25 different ad slots on the page, and so it's fine. We don't actually need to turn those off. So it's just a way of measuring these. So those are some interesting stats from our membership experience that might be useful for you guys. Next slide, please. So some acquisition tactics. Just jump straight into this, please, Melissa. For us, a membership strategy is a newsletter strategy. It is a key part of our of how we grow our membership program, and we're lucky that by growing our newsletters, we not only grow our potential for membership, but we also grow traffic to the site as well as advertising revenue. So newsletters have been a key part of the Daily Maverick journey from day one, but it's also great that they're also a key part of how we grow our membership program. When we were looking at the survey of how do we find our most engaged readers, it was clear that we needed to find our most engaged readers in order to market to them and to get them over the line to become members. And so newsletters are a great place for us to go and look for those most engaged audiences. We're continuously having to refine the message to speak to our cause. We're always testing, monitoring, and iterating. We use data to try and target people specifically in audience segments. And so you might find who are your most engaged audiences, who are the most likely to convert on a civic basis, who just want to join the cause, and who are the ones who are joining for the benefits, right? And so how can you tailor a message that speaks to people who are looking for benefits? How can you tailor messaging for people who will join to be part of a civic, their civic duty, and then tailoring messages according to that, and testing on an ongoing basis. What are we testing with this message, right? Are we testing this consumer behavior bias, or are we testing that one? Which one works better over the other? And so it's a continuous state of keeping track of what we're putting out into the world. Next slide. So if you look at this gives you a graph of where the traffic to our membership sign up page comes from. And you can see that almost half the traffic comes from newsletters, or what we call direct appeals, direct email appeals to people who are on our newsletter base. And you can see that the next behind that is messages that we put at the end of our articles, right? And so again, if we're trying to figure out who are our most engaged users, well, people who read to the end of feature-length articles are generally going to be the most engaged. People who spend time to read a 1,000-word article are highly engaged, and so those messages work well there. And then others, you can see, people who want to comment on the site, or people who click a button that says browse ad-free, for example. But overwhelmingly, the majority of traffic and conversions comes from people who are on our membership, on our newsletter base. The next slide will also show you how those direct appeals that we send to people on our base show spikes in the amount of traffic. And so, you obviously can't send appeals every day. We have increased the frequency of when we do send those appeals. You need to have, you can't just rely on that. You need to have things that are going on in between that, so that you're continuously getting more people to that landing page and converting them throughout the month. And this is where that always be closing, always on marketing that I mentioned earlier comes into play, because you can't just rely on those intermittent spikes. You've got to have things going on all the way through the month in order, to keep those numbers growing. In terms of measuring success, so we look at success on the variety of ways. Obviously, when you're launching a new program, all your effort is on acquisition, all your effort is on growth, all your effort is on trying to get as many people across the line. But so when we launched in August of 2018, that was our focus. So we had by 2019, we had 4,000 members. We had 45 staff working with us. We didn't have we then said, well, it can't just be about us. We have to measure the engagement, and what's called the Net Promoter Score. How likely are people to recommend this program, and out of 10, give us a rating. And so we started recording that, and obviously membership as a percentage of our overall revenue was 13%. And so a year and a half later, we'd grown to 8,000 members. The organization that helped us grow the organization to about 80 staff. We were getting a 7.8 out of 10 promoter score from our members, and membership as a percentage of revenue was 15% on an overall, we had doubled the organizational revenue in 2020 by 100%. And then in 2021, by 2021, end of 2021, we had grown to 17,000 members. The organization was now more than 100 people, and the share of revenue growth had increased to 36% of total. And obviously in COVID time, the overall organization growth had sort of stagnated a little bit due to fluctuations in commercial revenue and philanthropy. But we were happy that membership revenue had grown to become a big chunk, more than a third of our revenue within a short space of time. So important to note that measuring success is not just about the number of active members. It's that we're able to use that growth in revenue to be able to grow our newsroom and continuously measuring our engagement and the perception of the membership offering by how likely people are to recommend the program, and also what it's doing to our overall revenue mix as well. So those were some of the key indicators that we use to measure the success of the membership program. So that is quite a lot. So I'm going to give you a couple of things to just some highlights for you as we wrap up on this, and then we'll go into some questions. Some key takeaways here for you guys as you consider the various different aspects of solving the revenue Rubik's Cube that we all have to try and solve on a daily basis. Next slide, please. Right, the first one is we need to have a game plan, right? We need to have a game plan before we choose what types of revenue, what categories of revenue we want to pursue. How do we put a game plan together? Well, it needs to be aligned with the vision of the organization and the mission of the organization. We need to then define the revenue strategy that works for us, right? Given our environment, given our challenges, given how we're funded, given our skills and our resources, and it all needs to be congruent with the needs of our audience, right? So remember the Ikigai. We want to build Ikigai products. We want to choose Ikigai revenue opportunities. Reader revenue is the biggest shift that is happening in our era as we redesign what a media organization looks like in this post-disrupted era, right? It requires new skills and approaches from us. Understanding audiences is foundational to any successful reader revenue program, whether that's paywalls, whether that's donations, or whether that's a membership program. And it requires us to always be closing, right? So how are we going to be putting out enough relevant, targeted, fresh, creative material on a constant basis in order to keep that reader revenue effort growing? It is, I can't stress this enough, it's a huge effort, and you've got to always be closing with that. And then membership in use is a viable option to paywalls, and I think many of us in smaller, medium-sized organizations, this is an option, especially if we're working on editorial and journalism that drives accountability, that furthers the cause of social justice. It is an effort that can work, but takes a lot of work. It does require us having to deepen the relationship with our most engaged audiences, and in all of this, remembering that you can't put a paywall on a pig, and that comes back to if our journalism is not creating value, if our journalism is not servicing the needs of our audiences, then we're not going to get the buy-in, we're not going to get the support, we're not going to get that deeper engagement, the loyalty, the habit, the trust that people are going to need before that they are willing to support us financially and in other ways. And so finally, this was quite a lot of information. I'm sure it can feel a bit overwhelming. And so what we want to do with any learning experience is how do we convert this into action? And so some ways that I thought might be useful is to take some time out. Maybe you've jotted it down already, but what are the 3 things that stood out the most for you today, that resonated with what you can take back into your team, your organization, your next meeting with your colleagues, and list those top 3, and maybe that gives you a clue as to where you could start, right? Give yourself a time-based guide, right? What can you do tomorrow? What can you do next week? And what can you do next month from what you saw here today that struck a chord with you? And this is a great one, and an easy one is, what hypothesis can you test easily, right? What did you see here today that perhaps from the case study or something else that you could send out a simple survey to your readers and get some data back from that can help you make a decision towards changes or improvements or enhancements to your revenue strategy as you go forward? And all of these things are just, it's with most big challenges, it's about putting one foot in front of the other and just starting, right? And just making, a series of small incremental changes over a long period of time. So thank you. That's the end of the presentation. I have spoken a lot. I know there are some questions in the chat. So maybe we can jump into those and some other ones. Jackie, if you would mind directing from here, that would
okay. No, that's great, and you have covered a lot of ground, and I think what it what it really shows is how this is really such a whole, like you have to have a holistic approach, right? Because you're starting like with the journalism and then the products and what the audience will actually value enough to pay for. And then you have to kind of bring that understanding of the huge commercial shift that from going from B2B to B2C involves. But I'm trying to manage the time for today, and we do have more time tomorrow. We have an hour set aside just for this discussion. So what I would rather do, if you all don't mind, is if you can drop questions into the chat now, we'll capture those. And I think what Stilly has suggested in thinking about like what really stood out for you, what are the top 3, and what could you start next week? And then what could you test? Because that will help you think about what kind of questions and what advice you can really get, from this conversation. And then, because I want to be sure that we have 40 minutes now for Virginia's presentation, and then so 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes, Virginia will present, and then there'll be about 20 minutes where we can come back conversation about all of what we've talked about, because Publico is also a membership model. So I think if you don't mind, we could go straight to that, unless, Virginia, you just want to check your question first for Stilly, which...
We can move on, and then in the questions time, we just follow everything.
Okay, so so Virginia is editor-in-chief of Publico, which is a membership-based media based in Madrid, and formerly deputy editor-in-chief of El Mundo and 20 hours. Sorry, Virginia.
20 minutes, yeah.
20 minutes, 20 minutes, okay, sorry. Okay, over to you. You can introduce yourself a little bit more, but I know this, you're going to be impressed with this model, so off you go.
Well, thank you, Jackie. Yeah, well, I'm a journalist, 25 years working and managing some media in Spain in the last years. And so I'm going to talk to you about Publico and what we have done last years. I'm trying to share the screen. Let's see if this works. Let's see. Jackie, I can't. I don't know why, but
over to our technical expert, Melissa, now then.
But you should be able, like you're a co-host, so you should be able to share your screen. Do you see the green button at the bottom? Just
let's see.
There.
If you bring the cursor down to the bottom, you'll see there's a green button with an arrow.
Yeah, I'm trying there, but it shows me something very weird that I haven't seen never here. Let's see. Okay.
Melissa, can you do that then?
I'm trying to do that, but
Yeah, that's a plan B, but
so let's while Virginia's working that out, I'll just go to one of the questions, which was, have you tried podcasts, Stilly? And
yes, we have. We have
a good engagement tool.
They are a great engagement tool. There's just there's so many different ways that you can approach doing podcasts, and you can the different formats, and the biggest podcasting market in the world is the United States, and even the majority of podcasts there are not generating enough revenue to break even. And So you can imagine what that's like in other parts of the world. But we have found some success in getting sponsorship on those podcasting efforts, and so there have been great forms of engagement and actually now starting to pick up on the revenue side as well.
Okay.
Oh, great! It worked, so we can see Virginia's.
Yeah,
slide.
you can see it. Okay.
Yeah, great.
Okay, so let's go. Well, Público is a native digital political newspaper and is focused on investigation, and we have uncovered some of the most serious cases of corruption in Spain. It was born in 2007 as a printed newspaper, and in Spain is the only one that closed this printed newspaper and just, continued as online. 90% online. I'll explain later. It bets on what Kapuscinski called intentional journalism. We try to change unfair realities through our journalism. And we have a growing mass of subscribers that allows us to be independent, critical, and to build our own agenda. We have this strong commitment to pluralism and diversity. Diversity in all facets, in identity, linguistic, sexual, racial, functional, anywhere. And it is the only newspaper in Spain that is led by women. I'm the editor-in-chief. We have a deputy editor-in-chief, which is a woman. The main editors are women, and so on. We defend through our journalism human rights, diversity, plurality, and of course, democracy. We are a pioneer and agenda setter in information on gender equality, on climate crisis, on vulnerable groups and migrations, and of course, in investigative journalism. So we are very focused on public service journalism, and this is making that more and more readers come to us to report injustices or abuses. So they believe that we can investigate it, and we try to do that. And this is our, our editorial policy, very summarized. But I'm talking to you about this because this is public. Anyone can look through our website for our editorial policy, and they will find it. Okay, and this is because transparency is our flagship pillar. Okay, we are the only media outlet in Spain that has an in-house developed innovative tool that allows readers to delve through a very detailed map into the bowels of the news creation process. Okay, so we offer this transparency map for each piece of information, and this allows anyone to view the journalist process that is behind every piece of news. And readers like this a lot. So in every piece of news, you can find this symbol, this T, and clicking in that symbol, the readers can verify the transparency level of every news story. Okay, we describe our sources, the interviews we've made to make any information. Okay. As you have heard me from our these flags of Público, we see journalism as a service, not as a product that it is for sale. So this is why we choose that our business model should be membership. As Stiley has explained before, membership programs are based on the identification relationship between the reader and the newspaper. The reader believes in what the newspaper is proposing, and they feel this identification with the media. So we have readers that pay monthly fee or an annual fee, or that make a one-off donation to help newspaper to continue to work because they believe that is essential for the community. Okay, and another reason because of what we decided to do this membership model is because we strongly believe that information should be open to everyone. Mostly in these times of disinformation, we think this is very, very important. So we will try to maintain this model as long as we can. So we'll launch this model, membership model, at the beginning of 2018. We arrived late in our market because our direct competitors had already launched their payment models. But so we started that way, I mean, a little bit amateurish way. And the strategy and the subscription strategy was based on the ONG's digital partner recruitment models. I mean, they were very focused on the email channel. It didn't work bad, but last year, I mean, in 2020, we thought that we had to change this and that we have to make more focus on segmentation and on the web channel. So we changed a little bit the back model, and it had worked very, very good. And by now, I mean, we have 17,100 subscribers in March today. And this is we're following our roadmaps and our predictions so far. Our goal is to finish 2022 with 23,000 subscribers. So if everything is open, they don't have a paywall. What do they pay for? What do they offer to our readers? So they feel like they are special, which they are for us. Well, we offer them colloquia on topics of interest, and they can go, they can connect online. They can be the audience of this colloquia. And quarterly, we send them home a printed magazine, which is like in-depth analysis of the issues related to our flags. Okay, they love this product, and that's why I say here back to basics. I mean, because it's like going back to print, which is like the luxury product. In 2022, this year, we're changing a little bit this focus, and we're focusing on the Spanish territories because we think it's important to pay attention to these local territories. Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about our audience. Well, I won't go too long, okay? But I mean, we have like 400 million impacts per month through Google, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, okay? Readers in Publico, we have like 11 million unique visitors a month, and they consume a total of 54 million page views every month, okay? Who are our readers? They are middle-aged. We have a great impact on young people and young profiles. And in these young profiles are more females than males. Okay, and this is very rare in Spain because in Spain most of the readers in most newspapers are men. I mean, male readers are concentrated more in the elder ages. I mean, from 50 to 70, more or less. Okay, and to 20, from 20 through 40, you have more female readers. And they come from mostly the biggest cities in Spain. I mean, the cities with more population, but also from small cities, capitals, province, and from Latin America, growing. I mean, we have here Mexico City as the 5th city of readers, and Lima also in the 7th place. And if we talk about the typology of the audience, we have like three kinds. The anonymous, which are these 11 million monthly, the subscribers, which are 17,300 this month, and the registered ones, which are 260,000 nowadays. Okay, what we do is like, okay, we know we have these 11 million people that comes every month to Publico, and what we try is that they get registered. In the moment they get registered, we send them some newsletters, we allow them to comment a little bit, we give them the access to our magazines, but just online, and then just talking to them, they become subscribers, okay? And there's a growing mass of subscribers. So this is a business model. I mean, what we want to do is a better journalism through this business model. So every euro is reinvested in a newspaper. And thanks to this readers' contribution to our subscribers, we can grow in the newsroom. We have more than doubled our size since 2016. And we can dedicate more time and more journalists to some of our spotlights, such investigation, the denunciation of immigration policies in Spain, visibility of inequality, or now the war in Ukraine and its consequences. And for the first time in our history, we have been able to send a journalist there who is in Kiev. And this is thanks to all this membership plan, okay? So the bulk of Publico revenues come just from advertising, any kind of advertising, but our subscription model has reached in 2021 1/4 of our total revenues, okay? In 2018, it was 4/4. In these last times, we have made this experiment that I wanted to talk to you about, because this is another revenue stream. We made this alliance with another 16 independent media in Spain, and we asked for financing the largest opinion poll on Spanish monarchy, which was a subject vetoed in Spain up to that moment. So we started to talk about why in Spain nobody made this kind of polls, and we decided to do that. But since this had a high cost, we decided to launch a crowdfunding, and I mean, people just loved it. And in less than 24 hours, we covered all the cost, and we launched in this coordinated way the poll in all these 16 media. Okay. So what have we achieved in these last years? We have gained loyalty. Our audience has a recurrence of visits of around 2.6 times a month. This is above the average in Spain. They spend 2 minutes and 30 seconds on average on our stories, which is also above the average in Spain. Readers choose our political news. Publico is among the top 10 native digital media in Spain, and when the citizens are asked in the official poll from the government of Spain, which political news do they read, they spontaneous answer Publico in the sixth position, okay? And we have a very, very strong social environment. We are among the top 5 media communities with more engagement on Facebook and on Twitter. And this is with sports and without sports in the 8th place, okay? So this is Publico, this is what we're doing, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Virginia, that's great. Okay, so questions, comments? Judith, you were asking about Mexico City. How do you build the audience there? And is that where your subscribers are coming from, the members? Are they coming from Latin America as well?
Not yet. Not yet. No, not yet, because we didn't have the time to launch our program in Latin America, but we want to start doing this year. I mean, we wanted to reinforce our international information, which we started to do last year, because we didn't have resources enough to do a good job at international information. So last year we started doing that. I think that we have done a pretty good job. And I mean, the audience in Latin America is just growing so fast. So that was the first thing we wanted to do. And now we're going to the step 2, which is, okay, let's do it. I mean, but we have to work on it, and we want to do it through this year. But I mean, we have some months left.
And Virginia, for you, what have been the sort of greatest engagement tools? Is it, I mean, you talked about the newsletter. Has that been like the most important, or, you know, like Stilly went through a whole sort of range of things? What's...
Actually, I mean, our newsletter wasn't the greatest engagement tool, okay? Now we have changed them and they are starting to work better. But I mean, what people like most is our stories, our news, I mean, the things that we publish. But since last January, we launched a podcast. I mean, and it is having a great success. And a lot of subscribers come through the podcast, and well, I don't know. I mean, it's not a lot of time because we launched it like at the end of January, but we're trying that way also.
Okay, all right. So, who do you want to? You can raise your hands. I know we have some questions in the chat, but does anyone want to ask questions live? Just raise your hand.
Maybe we could get back to some questions for Steely.
Yep. Vera?
Yeah.
You had the first question, I think, in the chat, which was about, do you want to ask that one about convincing people about volunteering?
Yeah, so he had mentioned a whole bunch of different things like, you know, voting on projects, participation in events, non-financial ways to help, crowdsourcing. So that's work or effort from the members, right? And how do you kind of position it that this is a benefit that they're getting? It's a privilege to volunteer and be part of this, rather than saying, oh, they're, you know, doing the platform a favor.
And
yeah,
I noticed, I'm sorry, I noticed that Ricardo also raised his hand, so maybe we can pick that one up and then we'll get back to both.
Okay, Mira, let's do that one and then we'll come to Ricardo.
Yeah, it's a bit of both, but I think the key thing here is the authenticity of the mission and the cause. And if people feel that they are not being taken advantage of and that they're genuinely want to be part of building something and make that we position it that way, and all our actions and our communication supports and makes it clear that we authentically believe in membership being more than just about getting money from people, and that it's about opportunity, people who want to participate to do more. Financially, do just publisher because of the because of the that bring all those different interactions, all aligning with that that we buy into the concept of engagement making us better, and that we do that in a way that doesn't take advantage, but that people who have the time, who have the experience, and so for example, people who are experts in their field really do want to participate and share in an event or host an event, host a panel, because they're passionate about that topic and they're passionate about the cause. And so you offer them that and then you feed that back. You highlight that, you showcase that, here's this person who responded to a call, and that will go into the newsletter, and people feel proud of that interaction. So as long as you're not doing it in a way that's abusing people's good nature and offer to help, then there are more than enough people who see that as a benefit and not just as a favor.
Ricardo.
Hi, thanks to everyone for the presentations. It was very interesting. I would like to ask Virginia about, she mentioned that 1/4 of her public revenue comes from the subscription, no? And I was wondering what are the objectives, no? How far does Publico think they can go in terms of their revenue mix with this subscription part of it, because usually it's pretty hard to go over a certain percentage. So yeah, we have in Bainana, I am part of Bainana, which is a media here in Spain, funded by refugees. We just started a year ago, and we have also a subscription platform. So even though we're much smaller than them, it would be interesting to see her views regarding this strategy.
We don't really know. I would be glad if in 5 years, 6 years, we managed to make half of our revenues coming from subscribers. But I think this will be too optimistic, probably. But I don't think that is unrealistic. Maybe too optimistic, but I think that is achievable. Okay. It depends on a lot of things. The main difficulty that I see is that everything changes so fast, and we are having so many difficulties. Like pandemics, then now this war. So everything changes very fast, and it's very difficult to draw realistic goals, because you don't know what is the role that is going to play advertising in the following months, or we are seeing how the algorithms of Facebook and Google are changing so fast that we don't really know what's happening there, You have to be trying all the time and very alert and trying to see what's going to happen, which is very difficult. But I think that half of our revenues wouldn't be unrealistic.
Thanks.
Virginia, can I ask you about the number of stories that you do, I guess the length and the number, because I know, this is, you know, as we kind of switch to reader revenues, we're thinking a lot more about the kind of journalism that our communities value enough that they will pay for. And I know Thomas tomorrow, when he's talking about DENIC, and we'll talk a little bit about how they've experimented with the number of stories and things like that. So I wonder, how do you get that mix right for there being like enough journalism there, but, you know, not too many, and making sure that their quality and depth of each story is there?
I think that we still publish too much. I would like to publish less, but we have to balance the advertisement. I mean, the revenue that we get from advertising. So we cannot just lower the volume without gaining more subscribers. Okay, we are now publishing around, I mean, between 60 and 70 pieces a day. Okay, not all of them are written inside the newsroom. We have a broad community of freelance that works very closely to us, you know, and that we speak to them every day and ask them for some stories and so on. But I mean, it depends on the moment that some stories are more read than others. For example, this weekend I was very surprised because the most read stories in the newspaper was one practical about how to be independent from the electric companies. Okay, so how to sell, I don't know what the name in English is, but do you understand what I mean? How to build a system at our house to be
self-sufficient.
Okay?
Yes, self-sufficient.
That's it, self-sufficient. So, I mean, this was the most read story at Publico. And I mean, it was surprising because it's not the first time we talk about this, but probably because of the moment we are with all this Ukraine thing and Russia and this difficult moment that we are in Europe. I mean, a lot of people just engaged to that, you know. Sometimes, a lot of times our interviews are very well read. People like a lot some in-depth interviews. And the local information more and more in Spain is becoming more read also. So these small stories, but very well written and very well related, you know, I mean, with this tone, more literary tone, people like it a lot also.
Stilly, any comment on that?
I'm
Unfortunately, Stilly's breaking up a bit.
Yeah.
Now, hopefully he'll come back. But I think that's the difference, Virginia, too. You still have very much a mixed revenue. So you're dependent on advertising, so you actually need the kind of bulk, I guess, you know, the enough stories. Whereas I think Daily Maverick is more along that journey of being reader revenues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't understand the question, Jackie. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just saying the question about the number of stories that you publish. It does depend a little bit, or it depends to a large extent, I guess, on the revenue streams. And because Publico is dependent on both the advertising income, also the reader revenue, you're kind of in that in-between space.
Yeah, that's why I said that this is a very difficult balance. And in the meantime, we dedicate 5 people only to investigative journalism. I mean, I mean,
Yeah.
5 people from 45 is a lot of people, you know, and these 5 people, I mean, I know that I'm not going to have a story even every week from them, you know. I mean, maybe we have one story in 2 months or in 1 month, I don't know, I never know, you know, but they just still do that, you know, and I think that that is a good bet. Because I mean, that is the difference that we settle between Público and the other media. This investigative journalism, I mean, and the quality journalism.
Okay. Sorry, Stilly, we dropped you. You dropped out for a moment there, but we were just saying how when you're actually caught between, I guess, different revenue models. So you've got the reader revenues, but also still advertising. Then you're trying to satisfy both, right? With the number of stories and you know, having enough content for the advertising, while also, you know, being the satisfying your audience.